Welcome back. Unbelievably, this marks 101 videos related to guns, and that doesn't include the video of Benny getting his lock shorn and my snowblowing video. But it was nearly 6 years ago that it occurred to me that I had a lot of gun-related knowledge that I had acquired through years of instructing both police officers and civilians of all ages, including young children who had never handled guns before, men and women. And in keeping with my Catholic Christian teaching, it's just not fitting for me to die with the knowledge that God has gifted me with. This is, I thank, all thanks go to my Lord Jesus Christ for the knowledge I have. It was not mine, it was given to me. It was a gift. And precious gifts are not something to be buried. So I want to be able to share all that information that I have with you and share it freely and without expense, and as much and as fully as I can and as honestly as I can. I've tried to make it clear when I have my own personal opinions and separate those from fact. As is the common saying, I'm entitled to, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but nobody's entitled to their own facts. Facts are facts and opinions are opinions, and I try to keep the two separated and try to make it clear when there's a differentiation. There's a lot of material that those 100 videos has covered. I'm now doing a series on shotguns. I recently completed a series on the AR-15 and its history and a few factoids about it. And I've covered various common and popular calibers. I've done videos on cleaning and gun care. But there are so many questions that I get on a daily basis, and I must say that as time goes on, the accumulation of those questions is mounting and on a daily basis. And I really can't, in all fairness to my bride, I really can't spend all day long at the computer answering questions. So I'm going to have to start weaning them and selecting questions, answering questions which are pertinent to things that have not been discussed yet. And perhaps that will help seed further videos. And I'm getting some good, recommendations as to what I should do a video on. And some of them I can't necessarily hop on right away because I may not have the firearm to use as a demonstration if that's what it would require. So be patient. I try to answer all questions as best I can, and I'll try to get to yours if I can. But if I don't respond, understand that I get a lot of questions every single day, and I can only devote so much time to it. What I did do was go to my analytics and look at the top 10 videos that I have cut in the last 6 years, and just run down them from 10 to 1 to the top category, and just cover them in brief and probably highlight what is the probably some of the most pertinent questions pertaining to each of the videos. So without further eloquence, I've got here a little bit of Irish champagne, and it's in my duck stein. Top videos. Number 10. Boy, this was a big one. I had to finally, it didn't take long before I realized I had to shut down the comments, because it wasn't because I didn't want to answer the comments. It was because they just simply were too many. My email was filling up with 100 comments every single day. It was just untenable, so I just shut off the comments. Most of the questions related directly to things that I had already mentioned in the video, or were just simply remarks and things like that. So how to choose a defensive handgun, and why not a Glock? Very, very inviting question. Well, let me just say in brief that how to choose a handgun is exactly as I mentioned in the very first part of that video. It's the gun and cartridge that you can handle best. And it can't be any better than that, and it's no simpler than that. It's the gun and cartridge that you can handle best. Because you cannot simply carry a cartridge around because somebody else is recommending it or because it's ballistically more effective than another. Ballistics all aside, unless you can handle the cartridge, it's of no concern to you. The only cartridge that you can defend yourself with is the one that you can hit your target with, and that's all there is to it. So understand your own limitations. Work your way up. I think that was a point that I tried to make clear in the video. Don't just start out by buying yourself a 44 Special or a 45 Auto or a 44 Magnum or something like that, thinking that you can just learn to shoot handguns with such a cannon like that. You've got to work your way up. Start out with a 22 like this, and it doesn't have to be a Ruger, it doesn't have to be an expensive gun, but just learn the basics of shooting and work your way up to a cartridge that you can handle. And why not a Glock? I love Glocks. I think they're fabulously made. They're very well designed. They're rugged, durable. They're made like all other handguns on the market. They're just made well. Why not? Because they don't have a safety. Now I'm entitled to, as an instructor, I'm entitled to my own personal viewpoint on that, and I simply do not recommend that anybody have a handgun that is not does not have a safety on it, or if it's not a revolver. A revolver has a long stroke trigger, but unless it's a gun with a safety, I simply can't recommend it. So that's my own viewpoint, and I expressed why I said that in the video. A safety is not an impingement to your personal welfare. Glock is the first one that will tell you that you can learn to. It's all about learning and practice. Well, you can learn and practice to throw a safety off just as well as you can learn to draw a handgun without putting your finger on the trigger. It's elemental. You just learn to throw the safety off as you're drawing it, and by the time it's on target, it's ready to shoot. So I have nothing against Glocks. When they put a safety on, I'll recommend them. It's as simple as that. And that goes for all the other companies that are jumping on the same bandwagon. I don't care who they are. If you don't have a safety on a gun, I can't recommend you. Simple as that. Video number 9, how to clean and maintain a Ruger Mini 14. Of the 10 top videos, out of the 10 top videos from the last 100 that I've done, 6 of them have to do with cleaning. Well, how to clean it and maintain a Ruger Mini 14. I think the thing that surprised me was that it's such a popular gun. By virtue of the fact that the video has so far been more popular than even the AR-15 videos, any of the AR-15 videos, tells me that it's demonstrably a very popular gun. So I get a lot of questions about the Mini 14, and that was very satisfying because, I was a Ruger armorer. I spent some time over in Newport. I spent a week at Newport, New Hampshire, back in the 80s, learning how to maintain and to build Ruger firearms. And it was a wonderful time in my life to be able to rub elbows with Ruger personnel who, in the factory. They're wonderful people. So it was very delighting to me to learn that the Ruger company that has a fond spot in my heart is so popular. How to clean handguns. Well, that was number 8, and how to clean lever guns is number 7. I try to make it very clear that how to clean a handgun, and this goes for all guns, is as simple as just simply cleaning the dirt off. That's all there is to it. If you really have to, you can clean any gun with soap and water. The only problem is that soap and water is, there's a corrosive element there. So it requires that, in that situation, if you use soap and water, just simply, soap and Dawn dish detergent or anything like that, you can clean it very adequately. Just make sure you use extremely hot water that'll and get the metal hot enough so that it will dry off, and clean all surfaces, and then wipe it down with a lightly oiled rag to preserve the metal. But, you know, it's common practice to use a volatile solvent of some sort that doesn't have a corrosive element, and that's why I recommend cleaning methods which use a fairly low-grade volatile solvent, such as mineral spirits or Hoppy's number 9 or something like that, something on that order, without incurring any undue stink or, you know, harsh chemicals or anything like that, and with a minimum of ammonia. A little bit of ammonia goes a long way with gun cleaning, and as I explained, it's absolutely not necessary to scour a gun every time you clean it. You don't have to bring it back to pristine, you know, steel inside that gun barrel. In most cases, the plating of the barrel inside with copper is going to be beneficial. As far as for handguns go, you got to be very careful that you're avoiding leading issues. And so I spoke about how to remedy leading issues, which is largely a problem with regard to lead and its hardness or lack thereof. So, but that was a popular one. And how to clean lever guns. I think a lot of people were surprised by how little lubrication I use in lever guns, and this goes to all these different issues. Lubrication is simply not necessary for the performance of any handgun, rifle, or shotgun whatsoever. It's not essential, and it's actually detrimental in most cases. Lubrication is something which can be harmful if it's overused. It certainly can harm the integrity of wood. It can saturate wood and cause eventual softness and splitting of the wood. It can darken the wood, and it can ruin any finishes that are on top of it. It has a way of finding its way in through the inletting of the receiver and the barrel channel. It has this way of finding its way in underneath the varnish or urethane and causing problems with adhesion and blistering and things like that. You don't need to concern yourself with lubricating guns. Wiping the guns down with a nice clean mineral oil, just clear mineral oil, is all that you need to do. And when you wipe it down, you're protecting the steel, and you're also giving it a light lubrication, which is more than sufficient for any firearm. Firearms they're not running engines. They're not, you know, I see so many people will say, well, I'm a mechanic, and I was always taught, you know, lubrication is necessary to prevent friction. Well, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with firearms. Firearms do not cycle like an engine. They don't cycle like a chassis of a car going down a bumpy road. You know, the worst thing you could possibly do to this gun would be to fire it a few hundred times a day, and it's still going to continue to work. There's nothing whatsoever about this gun, which was this gun was made in 1987. It has fired literally thousands and thousands of rounds since 1987, and every part is just as nice and smooth operating as it ever was. It has never suffered any damage whatsoever, and it continues to just shoot. So, you know, the only way I lubricate this is I simply wipe down each of the parts when I take it apart with that lightly oiled cloth, and that's all there is that you need to do. How to clean your rifle professionally in solvent revelations. Well, that's number 6. That was a very popular one, I think, right along, and I try to demonstrate especially how to carefully cradle your gun. You know, and my great preference of all the cradles and vices that I've used through the years, my favorite is still the same one that's used by most factories, is simply to use a mechanic's or a machinist's vise with nice 4 or 5 inch jaws that will really grasp that barrel firmly, and use 3/8 inch plywood padded cauls, or if you want, you can get fancy plastic ones. But to be very honest with you, I find that the plywood holds with greater firmness and without any slipping, where some of the vinyl and plastic cauls, the covers that go on vice jaws, can sometimes cause slippage, and they're smaller surfaces. I'd rather have those big paddles there that have a good firm purchase. Protecting the gun from damage that way by having a good solid cradle is essential. Making sure that you have protection on the stock so that you don't drizzle solvents onto your wood or into the inletting. Making sure that you have a good bore guide that addresses the length of your receivers. It's very difficult without a bore guide to align your rod with the chamber and to get the patch started. So it's a lot easier to have a good bore guide that fits that particular rifle. And making sure that you protect your scope adequately. These are all things that a person who's cleaning their rifle needs to address. Make sure that you just basically protect the gun. You don't want to damage the gun while you're trying to clean it. And number 5, I think this was really interesting to me. I've done a lot of videos about many different calibers, and 30 caliber cartridges, 7mm cartridges, 6.5, 264 diameter bores and everything. And I think the fact that this is ranks number 5 testifies to what the title of the video. The 270 Winchester, reigning king after 90 years. It still remains an extremely popular American cartridge, and also what surprised me is how popular it is in other parts of the world. I get people writing me from all over the world who express their really high satisfaction for the performance of the 270 that they've been using all their life, and that they're very familiar with as well. I'm not here to rehash what Jack O'Connor did all his life in promoting the 270. I don't promote cartridges, and I don't want to have anybody write in and say I'm promoting a 270. I don't promote any cartridge. There is no cartridge that I like over any other cartridge. There are certain cartridges that I prefer for certain things, but I don't have a favorite cartridge. That would be contrary to my enjoyment of just shooting. I enjoy shooting. I enjoy putting holes in paper. I enjoy shooting at tin cans as much as the next guy, and I enjoy breaking clay pigeons. All these things, but I don't have a favorite cartridge. But I do have particular cartridges that I prefer for certain things. And if I'm going plains game hunting out west, where the shots are long, flat, and far, the 270 is where I go. That's all that I need, and that gets the job done. Now there are flatter shooting cartridges, not much flatter, but there are flatter shooting cartridges. There are harder hitting cartridges with more energy. There are bigger bore cartridges. There are smaller diameter cartridges. There's a whole host of options that are better in one way or another than the 270. But the 270 gets the job done, and that's the point I tried to make during the video, is that if you're going mule deer hunting, if you're going antelope hunting, if you're going, sheep hunting or anything like that, Dall sheep, mountain country, there's just nothing that performs any better for the task at hand than the 270. That's all there is to it. And the 270 will perform ballistically far beyond its flat point blank trajectory of 390 or 400 yards or so. It'll hit and drop game far beyond that range. There are upstarts now. The Winchester short Magnum 270 is a great cartridge. It adds roughly 40 yards of range to the 270 Winchester. So if you want to have a cartridge that simply burns more powder to basically shoot the same game, that's fine. But my whole video, I think, was very well received with regard to the 270 Winchester, because it does exactly what I said. It works. So if you're looking for, if somebody were to ask me what I would recommend as a plains game cartridge for game up to and including elk, or even long distance tundra shots on caribou and moose up in Newfoundland and in Quebec, I would always stick with the same cartridge, the 270. You got choices of 130 and 150 grain bullets. That a 150 grain bullet is nothing finer for deep penetration. So, number 4, gun cleaning and solvents. Here we are again, gun cleaning and solvents. I'm not going to reiterate what I just said. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Keep it to the minimum amount that's necessary to remove the crud from your gun. And it usually is a lot simpler than most people make it out to be. Paint thinner and mineral spirits will do just as well as almost anything else. And Hoppies has got that beautiful smell that so many people like. Some people hate it for whatever reason, but you know, I don't like to add oil to a gun as I'm cleaning it. So I don't use ballistol. People ask me why I don't use ballistol, because I don't want to. I use ballistol for my, you know, I use it to as a wood finishing polish. It's beautiful for that, but I don't need to use it on my gun. It doesn't do a thing for me. Video number 3. How to prepare and care for a new gun and the break-in process unveiled. Wow, that one soared in popularity almost immediately after I posted it. It's very evident that there's an awful lot of malarkey out there. It's impossible to prove a negative. And what I mean by that is, if I'm a person who is promoting the break-in process of, you know, firing so many shots and cleaning it, and firing so many shots and cleaning it repetitively in some sort of a particular order. Well, there's a suggestion there that the gun is going to shoot more accurately because of that process. Well, the problem is that I don't do that process, and my guns shoot very, very accurately. For sporter grade guns that come out of a box that's marked Winchester or Remington or Browning or whatever they are, without the break-in process, those guns that are just plain off-the-shelf guns can shoot sub-MOA. Some of them much subber than MOA. Some of them down to a ½ inch, 5/8 of an inch, and some, you know, I got a Tikka recently, some months ago, that shoots 3/8 of an inch and less, down to less than 1/4 of an inch, 3 and 5 shot groups. Now that gun I did not break in. It shot its very first groups were 3/8 of an inch, and that's with hand loads. So can somebody prove, if somebody can prove that their process will somehow or another enhance that, that's fine. But I'm not seeing anybody who promotes the break-in process giving me any statistical proof that to do it somehow exceeds not doing it. And that's where it all boils down to. I just do not want to have people I don't want to have my viewers get fascinated by doing something which is essentially lining somebody's pockets with a lot of gold. Ammo costs an awful lot of money these days, you know, and when you're being advised to fire what amounts to 60 shots, 3 boxes of ammo through a gun for a break-in process that has questionable results, well, I'm saying that you better look at the source, you know, follow the money. Who's recommending it and why? And this does not necessarily exclude the fact that somebody may be recommending it simply because they think it works. And I still would like to know why they think it works. So if a barrel manufacturer that doesn't have any purse strings attached to ammo, if they're recommending it, I'd like to see what the reason is that they recommend it. Are they doing any better than the barrel that is not broken in? So that's what you have to always ask. And I'm a very fact-driven person. I don't like to mingle theories with facts. I don't like to mingle feelings with facts. Those are all separate categories. So I like to keep things in proper order. Video number 2: How to choose a rifle scope sensibly in a confusing market. 200,000 views since that was posted over 5 years ago. A salesperson behind a counter at one of the very big, national hunting stores was speaking to me one afternoon. And he told me that he's really stunned by basically how uneducated people are when it comes to buying scopes. He says that he has people coming in, I'm in New Hampshire here, he says he has people coming in who are going deer hunting in New Hampshire. Now we have shots that don't generally exceed 35 or 40 yards as a rule. A long shot down a power line, you might possibly be able to get 200 yards out of it before you're over the next ridge. And there's very few and far between situations where you'd have an open field shot across a meadow from one corner to another that would exceed 175 to 200 yards. And yet he says people come in and they want to see a 4 to 14. They want to see the 3 to 9. He says everybody wants to have a 3 to 9. He says, is there any particular reason why you need a 3 to 9 on the rifle you just bought? Well, yeah, because that's they're a lot more power for the money. Well, he said, what are you particularly looking to see? He said, because it's like looking down a toilet paper tube. You don't have any reason to have 3 power for hunting in the woods. You don't have any reason to have power in excess of 1 power when you're hunting in the woods. Just a crosshair, as I mentioned in the video, basically it's just a crosshair. You want to have as wide a field of view as possible because that crosshair is all that you need when you're lining it up on a running game. I'm frequently asked, what are my favorite scopes? What's my favorite scope power? Another question that I'll get is, I just bought a such and such a caliber, and what's the best scope to put on that? Well, it basically goes back to the same answer no matter what. I prefer the widest possible field of view that I can have. I don't care what the game is. The widest possible field of view that I can have. The two scopes that I have enjoyed throughout all my hunting life have been 1 to 5 for the woodlands, for hunting in the woods, and 2 to 7 as an all-purpose scope that I can take out in the plains. So if I'm putting a scope on a rifle which I intend to someday shoot out in the plains, it's a 2 to 7. If it's a scope that's going to be used in the woods, it's a 1 to 5, and it's all it is. It doesn't make any difference. Absolutely no difference whatsoever what the caliber is. The caliber does not relate to what you see. Those are 2 separate issues. What's coming out of the bore has nothing to do with the reason behind a scope. A scope is to see game. It has nothing to do with trajectories. It has nothing to do with ballistics. It's simply a visual. It's a visual aperture to see your game out there. The suggestion that 7 power or even 5 power is somehow lacking in authority to get out at long ranges is ludicrous. Do the math yourself. If you can see an open blade on a target that's 30 yards away, you can 7 power is multiplying that tremendously. 5 power is multiplying that tremendously. So you're bringing in distant objects with a 5 power scope. You can very easily bring in a deer from 275 to 300 yards away without any problem whatsoever. And you can know that your crosshair is going to be laying on his brisket. That's all that's necessary. And if you're a plains game hunter and you're expecting to have shots maybe out to 350 to 400 yards, 7 power absolutely will put that crosshair right on his brisket exactly where you want at any elevation and any windage. And as the game gets bigger, when you're getting into bigger game like elk, that's another fascinating thing. People think that somehow the scope size should relate to equate to the size of the game. So as they get bigger game, they have to have a bigger scope. Well, that doesn't work that way either. The scope is only a visual device. That's all it is. It's just to magnify the target. That's all it is. So the 1 to 5 scope that you carry in the woods when you're hunting deer in New England or in Maine or in Michigan is the same scope that you can use on a 270 out in Utah for shooting elk at a distance, because you're still going to be able to put a 5-power crosshair on any game at any range, especially a big critter like an elk. So don't equate scope power to rifle power. Don't equate scope power to bore diameter. It has nothing to do with it. Varmint scopes, as I addressed in the video, is quite another matter. Varmint scopes, you want to have a scope which you can apply to the ranges that you're hunting varmints. Varmints are small little critters with small targets. So if you're shooting wide open plains out in Wyoming on prairie dogs, then yes, a powerful scope, maybe a 12 or a 14 power scope that with a fine crosshair will lay that crosshair exactly where you want. But if you're a New England woodchuck hunter and you're never going to see a woodchuck beyond 225 yards away, it's kind of crazy to be putting on anything more than a 7-power scope, and that's more than sufficient. And why am I recommending the lower power scopes? It's all about field of view, being able to see your surrounds, being able to locate your target quickly and put it up there. When you got a 24 power scope and you're trying to find a woodchuck that's running across a field to get back to his hole, you're really handicapped, whereas the person with a 7-power scope can simply put the scope up there. He can see the whole field. He put the crosshair right on the woodchuck as it's running, and he squeeze off his shot. So power is very, very rarely an advantage when it comes to hunting. Keep it as small as possible, and as I said in the video, less is more. And before I leave that topic, it's all about quality. If you're going to spend money on a scope, don't spend it on gadgetry. Don't spend it on MOA devices and side focus and all that. Put it into the quality of the scopes, and you don't have to go crazy on quality. $280 to $350 on anything that's in the 1.5 to 5 to 2 to 7 range is going to buy you a beautiful scope, a high-grade American-made scope. Number 1, this is amazing, how to oil and lubricate your gun and how not to. That's really, now I actually cut a second follow-up video to the first one because the first one was so popular and I wanted to redo it and put it in HD format. But I left the old one up, and the old one still is a perennial favorite. It's still getting views every single day. Well, how to lubricate, how to oil and lubricate, and how not to. Again, I'm going back to what I said in some of my earlier comments about cleaning. Less is more. You don't want to lubricate your gun. There's nothing to lubricate. All you want to do is to wipe it down with this cloth. This is oiled. This is oiled, soft cotton flannel, like you make pajamas with. And what I'm doing is I'm putting a coating of oil on there that can't be seen, but it's there. It's that metal is protected with oil. And the same with all the parts. When I take the gun apart, I wipe all the parts down with that same oil. I replenish it every now and then in the cloth, and I keep it in a heavy duty Ziploc bag. But this gun is 1987 again, and it's just as clean and sharp looking, and it's fired thousands of rounds. The bolt still has, as a matter of fact, the original. You can see how the steel is still got the black on it. There's no erosion of metal here. There's no thinning of steel surfaces. So don't get fascinated and carried away with oil. And you don't have to have any special compounds in your oil. You don't have to have Mobil 1. You don't have to have special synthetics. You don't have to have extra additives for mileage or for cold weather starting and all these things. And that light wipe down of oil will not freeze up. You see, no matter how cold it is. Now, right now we have below 0 temperatures outside. But I can put this in my holster and I can go walk around in below zero temperatures, and I know that the gun's going to operate because that light application of metal protective oil is not going to jam the gun up when a drop of oil freezes. So it's neither here nor there that you have an oil which is freeze proof. I don't have to worry about it being freeze proof because it's simply not it's not going to gel on the gun. So I'm very, very happy that over these last 6 years that I've been able to help people out with so many gun-related issues. And I'm hopefully going to continue to do more as we go along. Finish up a couple more maybe on the shotgun as the weather warms up and I can get my shooting mat out. I really want to get involved with showing you some position shooting and doing some outdoor stuff. I'd like to do a little bit of, basically shooting some clay birds and show you some techniques on shotgun shooting and things like that. Show you how to handle a handgun, in the field. So, well, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. God bless.